I'm Jameilla Robinson, and I am a part of Group 5, and I will be introducing you to our group project as we discuss exploring the ethical and social questions surrounding new gene editing technology. The history behind gene editing. There has been a discussion about gene editing and its ethical and social ramifications for many years. The early 20th century eugenics movement championed the notion of enhancing humanity as a population through forced sterilization and selective breeding. There are numerous ethical issues surrounding the use of genetic technologies to change human features as a result of the atrocities performed in the name of eugenics, such as the brutal sterilization of thousands of individuals in the U.S. The creation of the CRISPR-Cas9 gene editing technique has rekindled debates regarding the moral and social ramifications of this technology. With the help of the potent gene editing tool CRISPR-Cas9, scientists can now precisely and effectively alter the DNA of living things. By precisely cutting DNA at a specific region with an enzyme called Cas9, the method enables researchers to add, delete, and even replace genes. This technology has the potential to improve crop yields, provide new medications, and treat genetic illnesses. What laws, policies, or customs set the stage for the issue to emerge as an ethical issue? The gene editing has become an ethical concern as a result of several laws, rules, and practices that govern biomedical research and genetic technologies. Gene editing has become a contentious ethical issue as a result of a complicated interplay between historical, societal, and legal concerns about genetic research and tampering with human features. New genetic technologies being developed includes, with the development of new genetic technologies like CRISPR-Cas9, there are now more ethical questions concerning the possibility of using gene editing to make designer babies or for other non-therapeutic objectives. To ensure the proper use of gene editing technology, requests have been made for new laws and moral principles. Regulation of genetic research. To ensure the security and moral application of genetic research, rules and ethical principles have served as a guide for the development of gene editing technology. Gene therapy and other genetic technologies are governed in the U.S. by the National Institutes of Health, or NIH, and the Food and Drug Administration, or FDA. In the United States, regulations that permitted forced sterilization were frequently referred to as eugenics sterilization laws. More than 30,000 states passed these laws, which led to the forced sterilization of tens of thousands of people, many of whom were minorities or people with disabilities. Indiana and California both passed some of the first eugenic sterilization legislation in 1907 and 1909, respectively. Even though many of these laws were subsequently overturned or found to be unconstitutional, they left a long-lasting impression on how people saw eugenics and the necessity of ethical standards in scientific study. The use of gene editing technology in research and treatment is now governed by a number of national and international laws, rules, and guidelines. For instance, in the United States, the FDA regulates gene therapy in products as pharmaceuticals, and the National Institutes of Health has published guidelines for human gene therapy research. The World Health Organization has created international regulations for the control of gene editing technology. The idea of human dignity. The idea that every human being has inherent value and ought to be treated with respect is used to frame the ethical issues surrounding gene editing. Many contend that the manipulation and monetization of human existence raised by gene editing undermines the idea of human dignity. The idea of informed consent. Before giving their assent, patients must be fully informed about the risks and benefits of medical treatments. This principle lies at the heart of medical ethics. To guarantee that patients are fully aware of the consequences of the technology and the potential hazards, a strong system of informed consent is necessary for the ethical use of gene editing. Events led up to the issue of the new gene editing technology. Years of study in the fields of genetics and molecular biology led to the development of the new gene editing technique known as CRISPR-Cas9. However, several significant occasions contributed to the current surge in interest and worry regarding the moral and social ramifications of this technology. The CRISPR-Cas9 system was discovered in 2012 by a research team led by Jennifer Doudna and Emmanuel Charpentier. The system is a groundbreaking gene editing tool that enables precise alterations to be made to the DNA of living things. This finding sparked a lively public discussion regarding the moral and societal ramifications of gene editing technology, as well as rapid rise in its use. The first human embryo editing studies. In 2015, a team of Chinese researchers reported that CRISPR-Cas9 for the first time to modify the genes of human embryos. Scientists and ethicists from all around the world strongly disagreed with the study and expressed worries about the safety and moral ramifications of modifying human embryos' genomes. He Jiankui 2018 scandal. In 2018, He Jiankui, a Chinese scientist, claimed to have utilized CRISPR-Cas9 to produce the first genetically altered children ever. A worldwide ban on the use of gene editing technology in human embryos was demanded in response to the disclosure, which was roundly condemned by the scientific community. The continuous argument about the morality of gene editing. A robust and ongoing discussion regarding the moral and social ramifications of gene editing has been spurred by the discovery of CRISPR-Cas9 and the subsequent deployment of the technology in human embryos. In this debate, topics like the potential for gene editing to be used to produce designer babies, the dangers of unintended consequences, and the possibility that the technology would worsen current social and economic disparities have been discussed. What impact did the media have on this ethical issue of new gene editing technology? In terms of increasing public awareness of the new gene editing technology and influencing public opinion regarding its possible risks and benefits, the media has significantly influenced the ethical debate around this technique. Reporting on contentious studies. The media has been essential in bringing public attention to contentious gene editing research, such as the He Jiankui scandal of 2018 and the human embryo editing experiments in 2015. The news has sparked calls for more regulation and control of the technology and served to change public opinion about the moral ramifications of gene editing. Publicizing scientific developments. The media has been crucial in raising awareness of scientific developments in gene editing technology, such as the identification of CRISPR-Cas9 system. This has aided in increasing public knowledge of the possible benefits, potential risks, and ethical ramifications of gene editing technology. The media has also played a significant role in how the ethical discussion surrounding gene editing is framed. While some media outlets have highlighted the potential benefits of the technology for treating genetic diseases, others have placed more emphasis on dangers of unintended consequences and the possibility that it will be used for non-therapeutic purposes. Public involvement is important. Lastly, the media has contributed to public participation in ethical discussion surrounding gene editing by giving experts a forum to express their ideas and their viewpoints. The public debate regarding technology, its potential repercussions, has become more informed and sophisticated as a result of this. Overall, the media has been essential in influencing public opinion regarding the moral ramifications of gene editing technology and in promoting public discourse and discussion over the proper application and regulation of this potent new technology. What makes this issue an ethical issue or dilemma? What is the central ethical tension in this case? Standpoint number one. The ethical challenge from a utilitarian standpoint is whether the advantages of gene editing technology outweigh any potential drawbacks. The goal of utilitarianism, a consequentialist philosophy, is to maximize everyone's happiness or general well being. In this situation, the key question is whether the potential advantages of gene editing, such as the avoidance of hereditary illnesses, outweigh the disadvantages, such as unforeseen consequences or the possibility that technology may be applied for non therapeutic purposes. Standpoint number two. The ethical issue from a deontological standpoint is whether gene editing is fundamentally right or evil, regardless of its possible effects. Moral obligations and principles are emphasized in deontological systems like Kant's. In this situation, the question would be whether genome editing contravenes any moral standards, such as the concept of respect for persons, which dictates that we treat people as ends in and of themselves and not only as means to an end.
What are the philosophical arguments supporting the pro side of this issue? The philosophical arguments in favor of the new gene editing technology generally focuses on its potential advantages for treating and avoiding genetic illnesses, boosting human features and skills, and improving human health. These arguments emphasize how gene editing technology has the potential to be an effective instrument for enhancing the human condition and propose that it is an important area of study and development that should be pursued morally and responsibly. The physiological arguments supporting the pro side of this issue is that human gene editing research is morally necessary because it could potentially alleviate suffering and enhance the health and well being of future generations. Because of this, we must continue research due to the potential advantages that gene editing technology could offer. According to John Harris, gene editing technology could be an effective instrument for increasing human qualities and skills. Harris makes the case that there are no ethical argument against the employment of these upgrades as long as they are secure and optional. What are the physiological arguments supporting the pro side of this issue? Henry T. Greeley makes the case in The Ethics of Gene Editing that gene editing technology can benefit human health and welfare by curing and preventing hereditary diseases. Greenlee claims that gene editing has the potential to be a useful tool for enhancing human health if it is utilized responsibly and ethically. Zahar Mohammed makes the case in Genetic Engineering, Programmable Humans, that gene editing technology has the potential to be an effective tool for curing hereditary illnesses and enhancing human health. The authors argue that gene editing has the potential to be a useful tool for enhancing human health if it is utilized ethically and responsibly. What are the philosophical arguments supporting the con side of this issue? In general, the physiological arguments against the new gene editing technology emphasizes the dangers and moral dilemmas that could arise from using it, particularly in the context of using human embryos for research purposes and the potential to produce designer babies or improve unhealthy traits. These arguments emphasize the necessity of giving gene editing technology serious thought and control to ensure its appropriate and moral application. Tom Douglas and Julian Solovikuis make the case in Gene Editing and the Ethics of Human Embryo Research that gene editing technology creates major ethical issues, particularly in the setting of human embryo research. The authors argue against using gene editing technologies to produce designer babies or to improve characteristics that are unrelated to health. What are the philosophical arguments supporting the con side of this issue? This is a continuation from the previous slide. In addition to the challenges mentioned by Tom Douglas and Julian Salaquez in gene editing and the ethics of human embryo research, there are a number of other significant ethical problems connected to gene editing technology. Safety is one of the main ethical issues with gene editing technologies. When modifying the DNA of living things, there is a chance of unexpected repercussions, and even modest alterations could have unanticipated and possibly dangerous impacts. There is a worry that gene editing technology might widen the gap between those who can afford to use it and those who cannot by escalating already existing social and economic inequities. The potential for designer babies to be produced with improved genes or attributes could result in the division of society into genetic haves and have nots. The ability of people to give their assent to gene editing technology raises ethical concerns, particularly in the case of germline editing, which would alter DNA in a way that may be passed down to future generations. The capability of parents to decide in gene editing on their children's behalf is also a source of concern. This is again continued from the previous slide. There are worries about how gene editing technology will affect the environment, especially when it comes to genetically modified organisms, or GMOs, used in agriculture. There is a chance that GMOs will damage or interfere with natural ecosystems. The use of gene editing technology carries the potential of unforeseen repercussions because it is still in its early phases. Additionally, there is worry that gene editing can have unanticipated and possibly negative implications on the environment and human health. To guarantee that gene editing technology is used safely and responsibly, consistent ethical reflection and discussion will be necessary to address the technology's vast and multidimensional ethical challenges. What are the philosophical arguments supporting the con side of this issue? CRISPR critters and CRISPR cracks, governance gaps, and policy challenges of gene editing technologies article. The gene editing technology offers serious threats to both human health and the environment. The authors argue that before continuing with more research and development, it is crucial to solve the significant governance gaps and regulatory concerns related to this technology. Christopher Gingell makes the case in The Ethics of Germline Gene Editing that gene editing technology creates significant ethical issues, particularly in the context of human embryo research. The authors argue that the application of gene editing technologies could go against fundamental ethical norms, such as the idea of respect for individuals.
This is continuing the argument supporting the con side of this issue. Gwyneth contends that genome editing technology may be utilized to produce designer offspring or to select particular desirable genetic traits or attributes. This calls into question the morality of treating people as ends in themselves rather than as means and end to the value of human life. We may be accused of instrumentalizing people by choosing particular traits or qualities, turning them into inanimate things that can be manipulated and controlled. In addition, Gwyneth draws attention to the fact that the use of gene editing technology in human embryo research raises questions regarding the autonomy of free and informed consent of those participating. The ability to give informed permission for the use of gene editing technologies by the embryo's parents or the future person themselves remains unknown. This raises concerns about who has the authority to decide on a person's genetic makeup and if it is moral to do so without the person's knowledge or consent. The use of gene editing technologies in human embryo research, according to Glengale, also raises more ethical concerns about what it means to be human. We may be redefining what it means to be human by modifying the genetic makeup of human embryos, which poses significant philosophical and ethical issues that need to be carefully explored. According to the study, The Ethics of Genome Editing in Non-Human Animals, a systematic review of reasons reported in the academic literature, there's a lot of public skepticism and worry regarding gene editing technology, especially in light of its possible use in human embryos. The authors argue that to address these worries and guarantee gene editing technology is used ethically and responsibly, it is crucial to engage in public discourse and education. One worry that gene editing technology to select for particular qualities or attributes can support negative views about people with their disabilities, meaning that their lives are less important or desirable than those of those without disabilities. Additionally, there is a chance that gene editing technology will be utilized to completely eradicate some hereditary disorders, which could result in the stigmatization of people who already have those conditions. This might result in less funding services and resources for people with disabilities, as well as less focus on studying and understanding the illnesses themselves. Furthermore, there are worries that the use of gene editing technology to human embryos would result in the development of a genetic elite, where people who have access to the technology are viewed as superior to those who do not. Final position. The benefits that this technology might offer, such as the capacity to treat genetic illnesses, expand human capacities, and improve human health, are emphasized in the pro-gene editing arguments. These arguments are founded on the Cajun idea of treating people as ends in themselves rather to as means to an end, and the utilitarian idea of maximizing total well-being. To ensure that gene editing technology is used ethically and responsibly, the pro arguments also accept the necessity for rigorous consideration and regulation of it. Contrary, the arguments against the new gene editing technology emphasize the dangers and moral dilemmas that could arise from using it, particularly in the context of human embryo research and for the potential for designer babies or the enhancement of unrelated birth traits. The deontological principle of protecting the intrinsic worth and dignity of human life, the precautionary principle of preventing harm, the principle of justice in ensuring fair access to modern technology, and the precautionary principle are found on the foundations of these arguments. There are several ways to comprehend the injustices brought on by gene editing technologies. One worry is that technology will cause access disparities because those with more wealth and means would have easier access to it and its advantages. As a result, there may be an unfair distribution of advantages and harms. This could increase existing disparities based on socioeconomic position, geography, or other reasons. The ability to reinforce existing biases and prejudices against particular groups or persons is another possible injustice. For instance, if gene editing technology were to be applied to those individuals with specific physical or mental traits, it might feed assumptions and prejudices about what is deemed normal or desirable. This could result in prejudice against people who don't fit the quote-unquote standards. There are also worries that the application of gene editing technology would cause an erosion of individual diversity and distinctiveness, perhaps eliminating significant culture and biological differences. The significance and contributions of various cultures and groups might be erased as a result, homogenizing human populations. In general, the potential for gene editing technology to exacerbate already existing disparities, support biases and prejudices, and diminish diversity and individuality among human populations is what causes the injustices associated with the technology. Any ethical assessment of the use of gene editing technologies must take these considerations seriously. Both sides make good cases, but the con arguments seem to have a deeper intellectual and ethical foundation. This is because they emphasize how crucial it is to protect the intrinsic worth and dignity of human existence, which is a fundamental ethical ideal that is widely acknowledged, while pointing out the need for careful deliberation and regulation to guarantee that this technology is utilized ethically and responsibly. The arguments against gene editing also recognize the potential advantages of this technology. Furthermore, it is impossible to disregard the considerable hazards and moral dilemmas that could arise from the use of gene editing technologies. The long-term implications of gene editing, particularly in human embryos, are still largely unclear, and there is a significant likelihood of unforeseen consequences. Serious ethical issues are also raised by the possibility that this technology will be utilized to establish a genetic underclass or non health related modifications. In conclusion, both sides make compelling arguments, but the con arguments seem to have a stronger philosophical and ethical foundation because they place a higher value on upholding the inherent worth and dignity of human life, acknowledge the potential risks and moral dilemmas raised by gene editing technology, and emphasize the necessity of careful deliberation and regulation to ensure the moral and responsible application of this technology. And here are all of our sources cited.